you're the band Europe, you love a final countdown.
Whoa! And it exploded!
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You know what they put in the water, don't you? Fluoride. On the pretext that it strengthens your teeth. That's ridiculous.
Found one of the most shocking things that I've found thus far in all the inspections that I've performed for people so far. And here we are on the roof of an architecture firm in this beautiful space that this person lives in. I'm going to show you the first thing right here. Stay back. Radio frequency energy may exceed exposure limits. This person just found out recently that they have cancer, and they've actually been helping their son for the last year or so, who's 25, who also has cancer. And I'm going to show you what is behind this building, and I'm really, really shocked. So here we go. Here's this door, and we're gonna just step in here very briefly because it's really intense in here. So this is cell phone towers.
Look at that. It's unbelievable. And again, I'll show you the meter. Sitting here right outside these people's driveway. Now this is also extremely hard to believe. I've now driven down almost a full block, right next to the telephone pole, down a full block, and check this out. I'm going to show you the meter reading, and the meter is still up at 2 and 3 volts per meter in the red on the left-hand side at the peak.
Benjamin Rivas has worked on cell phone towers for 14 years.
Physically burned my hand.
The burn is a work injury you can see.
What you see here is what I would call an everyday crime.
Other problems he said caused by the towers aren't as easy to spot.
Depression, and I get headaches from time to time, and mood swings and stuff.
Here's what I consider, in my personal opinion, another crime scene. And I don't think I'm being dramatic saying this. Here's the cell phone tower. I want you to notice where this is located. Literally in the parking lot, right next to these stores. There's human beings working in these stores and eating in these restaurants all day long, and there's a cell phone tower right there. That's hitting 1,000 microwatts per square meter, depending on the pulses that are coming off the tower. I'm across the street, as you can see. I wouldn't even want to guess what the radiation exposure is inside of those stores there. And I have the meter set on average, which you can see here it says RMS, which means microwatts per square meter average power density. This is 800, 900 microwatts per square meter. Goes even higher. Once again, biological effects start at 3.4 to 6 microwatts per square meter average power density.
52-year-old Sanjay Kasliwal is counting the days now. Incurable brain cancer due to radiation from mobile phone towers in his neighborhood has reduced life to little more. His brother has been termed luckier, sent to the US for brain surgery, but both of them know hope fades.
I have written to all possible government offices to find out what sort of control are they doing or what sort of an audit is being done, and it seems everything falls on deaf ears. Nobody is concerned.
Experts say the area the two men live in faces radiation from mobile phone towers equivalent to living in a microwave oven 19 minutes a day.
See, the levels were somewhere between -18 to -20 to 20 dBm also over here, and these radiation levels are very high for prolonged exposure, almost about 100 times higher than what is recommended for continuous safe exposure. And there are 2 cancer cases which have been reported in this house. There's even a dog has got cancer.
It's kind of interesting when cell phone tower workers are telling you that they have headaches, that they have brain cancer, that they have all these health issues. throughout the day where they get these headaches or blurry vision. Why would so many of these guys have these seemingly often problems like this? You would think that if there was nothing really bad about cell phone towers, that obviously those who would work on these towers would be fine. But instead you hear something quite different. And with the readouts with this, 1,000 plus microwatts per square meter measured near one of these cell phone towers, when it only takes about 10 microwatts to even have any effect on you. So we're talking 100 times the threshold for where it actually can cause harm to a person. So it's very interesting, you know. Some people have mentioned that when they've lived near cell phone towers that they've had headaches and depression, and this is also something that these tower workers have mentioned as well, having even depression from doing this. So this also begs the question of whether or not these patents I've shown in a previous video really are something that is being used on some of these towers to where it can actually influence you. These frequencies that they use can cause certain types of emotions and certain types of feelings. At certain frequencies it makes you even potentially depressed feeling, and in other frequencies it can cause you to even become enraged. And why is there so many cell phone towers? And in many cases these cell phone towers, if you put your cell phone directly towards them in the range and it doesn't do anything. You go look up the cell phone tower online, it says it's for this certain particular company, let's say Sprint. You go and take your phone over to it and you have no bars. It doesn't even make any sense. Or even have some of these cell phone towers multiples in a row. Why would you have so many in a row? What's the relevance of that? It's supposed to be covering certain square footage, allegedly, but instead we have them lined up near a highway. Why would they be doing that? Especially not very far apart. So it makes you kind of wonder what they're really for here.
To broadcast the entire Earth, it takes 2 kilowatts, 2 hair dryers. Now a microwave oven uses 1,000 watts or 1 kilowatt. Here's the damage 1 kilowatt can be done by somebody when they take a magnetron out of a microwave and turn it into a ray gun. This is just a small example of a low-tech weapon running on 1,000 watts. Then you have these things here, these huge towers of death. Now each row in this tower, an array, or a set of dishes or antennas or whatever you want to call them, is connected to a cable with a maximum power output of 300,000 watts, or 300 kilowatts. That's 300 microwave ovens. We base that conservative estimate based on the gauge of the cabling that's running up to one of these arrays. They're estimated at 300,000 watts per cable. Those aren't fiber optic cables running up to those arrays. It's a thick copper gauge transmission line quality cable running up those towers. Now if there's 10 cables, that's like 3 megawatts of power. And these cables are out there to output power to the magnetron, not for data transfer. That's an important point. These cell phone towers are weaponized. There's no other reason to have this much power running up the cables. It isn't for data transfer. Now, FCC regulations limit normal transmission per array to about 400 watts. To put that into perspective, 1 watt from your phone can go 25 miles to the nearest tower. A 1,000 watt magnetron on a stick can blow shit up. And these towers have a 300 kilowatt power line running up to each rectenna. And who knows, there could be an amplifier at the top of these towers that steps up the power even more. The point is here, ladies and gentlemen, is that these companies like Lucent and Google could turn up the juice at any time and nuke a town. They could nuke the entire country without any warning, without anybody being able to protect themselves.
Now here at America Trends, we talk about what you're talking about on your social media. Our producers spend hours each day not reading the old fake news headlines. You are our incredible reporters, so I want to get right back to it. John McCain recently diagnosed with a brain tumor, as you know, and we see other prominent figures in America like former Vice President Beau Biden, a son of former Vice President Beau Biden, who, as you know, died of brain cancer. But it's not just politicians. It happens to people across the country, and some studies have shown a link between brain cancer and cell phone use. So I wondered, when I saw what had happened with John McCain, if it could have anything to do with that. So I called in the expert here with me now to discuss California Brain Tumor Association, and We Are the Evidence, bioinitiative.org, Kevin Modis. Kevin, the John McCain, is it any coincidence? Is there any way it's coincidence that the scar he has is like right here, and this is all happening right here, and that happens to be right where you put a cell phone?
Yeah, just like you said, Gina, the scar is right down his face, exactly where you would hold your cell phone. And you need to understand, he had a glioblastoma. And while the wireless industry says there's no increase in brain tumors, so there's no problem with cell phones, the reality is there's a significant increase in glioblastomas. Unfortunately, they're very, very deadly. So whether curing some source of brain cancer, they can come up with these statistics that say there's no increase in brain cancer, when you're saying there has been a dramatic increase in the one specifically related to cell phone radiation. Yeah, and the glioblastomas have been related to cell phone use by a scientist and medical doctor, Leonard Hardell, and people can go to his blog, Hardell blog, and he's one of the leading scientists, has a group that has been doing research for a long time and has significantly shown a relationship between cell phone use and these GBMs, or glioblastomas. The other thing is the wireless industry says there hasn't been any increase in brain tumors, and for the overall head, there hasn't been an increase. But in the three areas of the brain that get the most cell phone radiation, okay, your frontal lobe, your temporal lobe, and your cerebellum, the increase is significant in a study that was done by USC all the way up for the 15 years before 2006. Now, that's up to 2006. Now, think about how much people have been using wireless since 2006. Yeah, and your Bluetooth doesn't change this, right? No, it doesn't, because it still transmits to the cell phone. As much? Not as much, but you still have a transmitter in your ear. And as one technician said, why don't you explain to him, your ear is a hole in your head, and those microwaves go right into your head. So I don't really like to talk on my phone, and the reason is because I get a headache when I talk on my phone. And people get really frustrated with me that I almost refuse to talk on my cell phone. Unless it's an emergency with one of my children, I pretty much don't do it. And if I do it, I will use the speaker function. Am I safe? Well, you're not safe, and you're a great example of neurological effects from wireless radiation. The same kind of neurological effects, the FCC, don't exist, and this is the big problem. The FCC regulates wireless radiation human exposure levels, and the fact is the FCC has no one qualified to assess safety for us. Yet they're saying it's safe, and they've set a standard that's too high. It's a thermal standard. Thermal and above. If it doesn't heat you or burn you, it doesn't hurt you. And as you know, your phone doesn't heat or burn you, but yet you still have biological effects. People are getting neurological effects, people are getting cancer from wireless radiation, people are getting immune system problems, and fertility is affected, basically affecting all systems of the body. And people just go to that website you talked about, bioinitiative.org. This looks at 3,600 studies and breaks it down by different sections of the body and shows you there's definitely evidence that wireless radiation is very, very harmful and should be minimized rather than maximized, which the FCC is doing in concert with the wireless industry and their lobby group, CTIA. But it's actually scarier than that, because even if you're not using a cell phone at all, they're putting towers up all over the country without your permission. You used to have to sign something, and you saw those little green tree-looking things that were cell towers, you know, and if they were going to put them within a certain radius of your house, you had to sign off of them. Not the case anymore. Tell us. Yeah, so there's a new wireless technology, 5G. So right now we're at a lower frequency, like 1 to 3 gigahertz. This is now 24 to 90 gigahertz. Just to put that in perspective, 90 gigahertz is 90 billion electromagnetic waves per second hitting and going through your cells every second. That is far from natural. Your heart has a circuit, has electricity to it. Your brain has electricity to it. It's about 8 to 10 hertz. This is billions of times more than what's natural. And 5G is being forced on us. In California, SB 649 is going to make it so they can put one of these transmitters in front of your house. And 5G doesn't travel very well because it's very dense. And so they have to put a transmitter about every 2 to 10 homes. And they're not going to ask you about it. They're just going to put it in front of you, exempt from any health, safety, or environmental review.
On streetlights.
On streetlights, on poles in front of your house, on any kind of fixture that can get what they want. And it's not going to be your choice. There's not going to be any consent. And I got to tell you, it's not a very Republican thing to do. It's not a very American thing to do. And these bills are stripping away your constitutional rights to protect yourself and your families. But this goes way back. The 1996 Telecommunications Act that was passed in 1996 by Bill Clinton had Section 704 that banned by law looking at health and safety when they put cell towers in. This is how they built out the whole network. They've known about health effects for decades.
This is Orwellian.
Absolutely. It's a concerted, concentrated effort to hide wireless radiation health effects, and it's absolutely time it stops. 5G is, we're looking at a worst-case scenario. High-frequency, high-intensity wireless in front of your home, in close proximity, continuously. What's interesting is the Army, and people should look this up, look up the active denial system. The active denial system. The military is using these frequencies at 95 gigahertz, and remember, they're talking about 24 to 90 gigahertz for this, as a biological weapon for crowd control. So on the one hand, the FCC is saying it's completely harmless. On the other hand, the military is using it as a biological weapon. Somebody's lying. And what's interesting for your audience to look at is their own insurance policy. Look at your homeowner's insurance. Look in the back under general exclusions. You'll see asbestos isn't covered by insurance. Earthquakes aren't covered by insurance. Fires aren't covered by some insurance. And then you'll see electromagnetic radiation or electromagnetic waves, the kind of emitted from wireless technology. So the industry, the insurance industry that is given the mandate to assess risk has assessed it as a high-risk agent and says they won't cover biological effects from wireless radiation, yet they're putting the exact same thing near your home, next to your head, in your schools, and it's absolutely wrong. It's time we do something. The industry is now pushing it with Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and he's now said, I'm going to speed up the siting of these small cell transmitters. He's met with AT&T and Verizon and all those. AT&T invested $16 million in lobbying last year. We don't have the kind of resources to get a meeting. One of the reasons I came to meet with you was to say to you, please help me get a meeting with President Trump. I believe he has the guts and the courage, and he cares enough about the average person to say no to these transmitters and say yes to making this technology safer.
If we can get the word out to him.
If we can meet with him.
Yeah. Well, you have taken this so seriously that you've literally dedicated your life to this. This is your life's work. But aside from meeting with the president, which of course has to be a goal if we're going to change policy, I know you've also met with many legislators. How can we, the average citizen, be the most effective? Because honestly, the information is overwhelming.
Okay. So half the states now have these bills called the Wireless Telecommunications Facilities Act, designed on a state level to strip your rights away and put these little cell transmitters in front of your house. By the way, they're not so little. They can be as large as a refrigerator with a power source included. People need to get politically active. It's time to get off the couch. It's time to take a stand.
These service personnel, playing the role of an unruly mob at Georgia's Moody Air Force Base, are about to fall prey to an invisible ray. The hulking panel atop this Humvee is part of what the U.S. military calls the Active Denial System, or ADS. It's designed to incapacitate enemy combatants with an unnerving, non-lethal sensation of intense heat. Watch as the ray silently strikes and scatters the crowd.
The Active Denial System has three great characteristics. First of all, it's safe. Second, it's effective. And third, it has a tremendous range compared to the other non-lethal weapons that today's warfighter has.
This is the heart of this 100 kilowatt transmitter. This is the gyrotron. 200 kilowatts of electricity is fed in, and 100 kilowatts of radio frequency comes out. That millimeter wave energy comes out an aperture underneath the main reflector, hits the subreflector, which illuminates that main reflector and sends a roughly antenna-sized beam downrange. Those holes that you see in the antenna are for the cameras and other visual equipment that the operator uses so that he knows exactly where that beam is going.
It's operated by a joystick. The operator looks into the console, sees exactly what that antenna is aimed at, moves the joystick left, antenna slews to the left, same way to the right. Then when there's an individual who's identified as a troublemaker, he has a cursor. He can put that cursor on that individual, pull the trigger that's on the joystick, and the energy is sent downrange at the speed of light.
The electromagnetic radiation released by the active denial system is similar to the microwaves in your microwave oven, in that it causes the water molecules in the target to become excited and heat up. But that's where the similarity ends. The ADS is designed to heat only the very surface of the skin. It does this by outputting only the carefully chosen radio wave frequency of 95 gigahertz. Even though it can easily penetrate clothing, the ADS generates a much shorter and safer wavelength of radio waves than those used in microwave ovens.
The active denial system millimeter wave directed energy beam reaches 1/64th of an inch into human skin. So that is the outermost layer of the skin, roughly equivalent to about 3 sheets of notebook paper. It is essentially affecting the pain nerves in the outermost layer of the skin, heating them up and causing an immediate repel effect.
Even these stoic servicemen, aware of what's about to happen,
engage,
can't help but flinch when they feel the heat.
This is the first time I've experienced the beam from the active denial system, and it feels like an intense warmth feeling, kind of similar to opening a very hot oven door, and it's a compelling feeling that you want to get out of the way of this beam. If you were not expecting this, it would definitely shock you and make you want to move.
The ADS represents just the latest effort to devise an effective ray weapon.
Talking about post-human society. That's right, you heard that correctly. Post-human. After human. When man merges with machine. When man will be no more. That is their endgame, to wipe out humanity. Where resistance is futile. That kind of thing. That's what they're thinking about. That's what they want to bring into the world. And that brings us back to what we were talking about yesterday, the weaponization of cell phone towers. To recap that discussion, a cell phone tower is a giant microwave oven on a stick. Cell phone towers use a magnetron or an oscillator like a microwave oven to make microwaves. That's how they communicate. Radars use the very same technology. That part that's beaming into the dish is a magnetron. Just like a microwave oven and just like a cell phone tower.
Lift pieces of destroyed mobile homes in search of any clues that someone may not have made it out of here alive.
We are basically digging through rubble. We're looking for, at this point, anything human, clothing could be, but everything has been burned up that we found, and we're finding bone, basically, is what it's been reduced to.
In addition to the dozens of volunteers from Marin, Monterey, and Sonoma County as part of the search and rescue effort, there are 5 cadaver dog teams here as well. They come from Alameda County.
They're doing a great job of searching around, giving us an idea of where to start searching.
Together, they do find another victim of the fire.
Nobody has ever dreamed that something like this would come across the hill so fast and come into a populated residential, area.
The fire that scorched Santa Rosa was so hot, one victim had to be identified through a medical implant, like a hip replacement.
And it had the serial number on the implant, and we were able to find that implant and the serial number in the ash.
Now, the still daunting task of examining more than 250 missing persons reports nearly a week after the fire broke out.
As flames in Northern California continue to spread out of control, authorities have begun the grim task of trying to find and identify those who couldn't escape their burning homes. Searchers in some areas are being helped by cadaver dogs. Authorities say some remains are so beyond recognition, they will use serial numbers on medical implants like hip replacements to ID victims.
Some of them are merely ashes and bones, and we may never get truly confirmative identification on ashes. Cremated, you can't get ID.
Though firefighters have made some modest progress, fires have grown and now cover more than 300 square miles.
Cell phone service is still spotty. Companies like Verizon are using temporary microwave technology. Companies like Verizon are using temporary microwave technology to help people connect.
My name is Chuck Roddens with Computer Care Clinic. One of the most frequent questions we get here in our service is,
How can I resolve my Wi-Fi troubleshooting problems? People lose signal or a device stops connecting. So I decided in order to answer that question with any authority, I needed to look a little bit further into this whole Wi-Fi thing. What is it? How does it work? What type of signals are being broadcast? Are they directional? How much power do you need? And then I thought about it as I was doing this research. Well, what are the effects of these things, these Wi-Fi transmitters? What type of radio frequencies do they use? How much power do they need? And where are they? And how are they affecting us, if in any way at all? So this video is going to be a little bit longer than our usual tip of the day, but it's going to explore Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi signals, and we'll dig into a little bit of radio frequency too, just in case you forgot or you were sleeping during your physics classes in high school. So let's dig into Wi-Fi, find out the myths and the truths, and hopefully we'll have a better idea and handle on how to troubleshoot our Wi-Fi problems.
Let's first look at an oversimplified view of the electromagnetic field, or EMF radiation spectrum. EMF radiation can be classified from very low frequency, which has a long wavelength, to very high frequency, which has a short wavelength. The sound waves humans can hear are a form of very low frequency EMF radiation, with one single electromagnetic wave cycle or wavelength longer than a football field. On the high frequency end, you can find things like X-rays and gamma rays with a wavelength smaller than an atom. Radio waves and microwaves are forms of electromagnetic energy that are collectively described by the term radio frequency, or RF. RF emissions are discussed in terms of energy, radiation, or fields. Radiation is defined as energy traveling through the air in the form of waves or particles. Electromagnetic radiation can be described as waves of electric and magnetic energy moving together or radiating through space. These radiation waves are generated by the movement of electrical charges through a conductive metal object, like an antenna. For example, the movement of energy in a radio or television or cellular base station antenna generates electromagnetic waves that radiate away from the antenna and are eventually intercepted by a receiving antenna, such as your rooftop TV antenna, a car radio antenna, or an antenna integrated into a handheld device, such as a cellular telephone. Frequency is the number of electromagnetic waves passing any given point in 1 second. For example, a typical radio wave transmitted by your favorite FM radio station has a wavelength of about 10 feet or 3 meters and a frequency of about 100 million cycles or waves per second, known as 100 megahertz. So your favorite FM radio station sends about 100 million 10-foot-long RF electromagnetic waves into the air every second. That's a lot of waves. Telecommunication services cannot exist without EMF. Microwave ovens, commercial heating, manufacturing, diagnostic medical services, some medical techniques, and radar are also uses of RF energy. There's also natural RF produced by Earth and space. So we're surrounded by radiation. EMF radiation is classified as non-ionizing or ionizing. Ionizing EMF radiation, like certain UV rays and X-rays, can break chemical bonds, which is not great. That means they can cause cell damage in living things, which is obviously bad for us. RF radiation, as found in radio, TV, cell phone, and Wi-Fi transmissions, is considered non-ionizing. Some sort of EMF radiation is emitted by all technical equipment or devices that produce electromagnetic fields. It's basically anything that gets plugged in or runs on a battery. Power lines, radar systems, communication towers, cell phones, cordless phones, Wi-Fi routers, iPads, TVs, computers, gaming consoles. They all produce some sort of EMF radiation. Well, here's where it gets interesting. All EMF radiation has an effect on the human body. But the question is whether it's a negligible effect or a negative effect, and to what degree. Microwaves are a specific category of radio waves. They can be defined as radio frequency radiation with frequencies from several hundred megahertz to several gigahertz, or thousands of megahertz. One of the most familiar and widespread uses of microwave energy is found in household microwave ovens, which operate at a frequency of about 2,450 megahertz, or 2.45 gigahertz. Sound familiar? That's right. Almost the same frequency your microwave oven uses to heat your food is also used for most cordless phones and Wi-Fi routers. Technically, Wi-Fi channels typically range from 2.412 gigahertz to about 2.472 gigahertz, right in that spectrum. So you might think, aha, that's where my Wi-Fi interference is coming from, my microwave oven. But not so fast. Most microwave ovens are well shielded and will not emit enough radiation to interfere with wireless communications even when they're on. If your microwave is, say, very old or was dropped or damaged in a move, it might have a damaged shield. To be safe, it's probably a good idea to replace it. If you have doubts about your wireless equipment and interference, you could upgrade that wireless networking equipment and your cordless phone devices to the newer 5 gigahertz band, which is way above the 2.4, as long as your wireless devices all support it. Research continues on the possible effects of exposure to RF and microwave radiation. 2.4 gigahertz, as we learned, is far from ionizing radiation, the type that can quickly harm human tissue and cause bad things like cancer. But you can't see or feel any radiation. And what's scary is the long-term effects of exposure to radiation might not appear for several months or even years. It's widely thought the principal effect of non-ionizing radiation, like microwaves, is an increase in the temperature of water in our bodies. Theoretically, it would take an unlikely amount of microwave energy to cause harm to a human body. But as scientists are beginning to study the effects more closely, some people are beginning to change their minds. In 2011, the WHO International Agency for Research on Cancer classified radio frequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans, based on an increased risk for glioma, a malignant type of brain cancer associated with wireless phone use. You probably heard about that in the news. Also, 2 areas of the body, the eyes and the testes, are known to be particularly vulnerable to heating by RF energy because of the relative lack of available blood flow to dissipate the excessive heat. Laboratory experiments have shown that 30 minutes to 1 hour of considerably high levels of RF radiation, now we're talking 100 to 200 milliwatts per centimeter squared, which is a tremendous amount of energy, can cause cataracts in rabbits. Temporary sterility caused by such effects as changes in sperm count and in sperm mobility is possible after exposures of the testes to high-level RF radiation. So if you're thinking about having children, fellows, you might want to remove that cell phone from your front pocket. The good news is that typical environmental levels of RF energy routinely encountered by the general public are far below levels necessary to produce significant heating and increased body temperature. But there may be situations, particularly workplace environments near high-powered RF sources, where recommended limits for safe exposure of human beings to RF energy could be exceeded. More recently, other scientific laboratories in North America, Europe, and elsewhere have reported certain biological effects after exposure of animals and animal tissue to relatively low levels of RF radiation. These reported effects have included certain changes in the immune system, neurological effects, behavioral effects, evidence for a link between microwave exposure and the action of certain drugs and compounds, an effect in brain tissue, and effects on DNA. Some studies have also examined the possibility of a link between RF and microwave exposure and cancer. Results to date have been inconclusive. Microwave exposure, when you think about it, is fairly new, but it's growing quickly. Dr. Magda Havas makes some great points regarding our lack of experience with the effects of non-ionizing radiation since it's relatively recent. Cell phones have been around for nearly 30 years, but only becoming widespread in the last 10 since smartphones took off. Wi-Fi has been a thing for nearly 15 years now, growing slowly, but now it's everywhere. And smart meters installed by your local electric company have been transmitting pulses of pretty concerning power for about 5 years, causing a lot of people to take notice. It takes quite a while to formulate a statistically significant health finding, and up to now, there's not a whole lot of evidence or research. Also, Dr. Magdas notes that human exposure to radiation used to be intermittent, but now it's more constant than ever. Wi-Fi routers emit a beacon signal that is continuous as long as the device is powered on. In other words, you don't have to be connected to the internet to be exposed to the radiation generated by a wireless router. When information is either uploaded or downloaded, the radiation levels increase both at the router and at the computer. The same is true for cordless phones and wireless baby monitors. Voice-activated baby monitors and cordless phones that radiate only when in use are available in Europe, but not currently available widely in North America. Now, some people are more sensitive to EMF than others, suffering from a recently discovered affliction known as electronic hypersensitivity. They used to just think these people are crazy, but now they're finding that symptoms including unexplained fatigue, sleep disturbances, headaches, feeling of discomfort, difficulty concentrating, depression, memory loss, visual disruptions, irritability, hearing disruptions, ringing in the ears, skin problems, heart palpitations, and irregular heartbeat, dizziness, loss of appetite, movement difficulties, and nausea may all be symptoms of electronic hypersensitivity. When electrically hypersensitive people go into an electromagnetically clean environment, many of their symptoms seem to diminish or disappear. Studies predict by 2017, almost 50% of the population may be complaining of this illness. Some countries are already withdrawing Wi-Fi from public areas and even creating radiation-free refuges for people with electrosensitivity. The bottom line on RF radiation and its effect on us? Well, the jury is still out, but it's not looking great. In the meantime, until we all know for sure, it might be prudent to take a few precautionary steps. Fortunately, it's pretty easy to avoid most microwave radiation in high doses. Move wireless routers and cell phones further away from people. The further they are away, the less RF you'll absorb. Use headphones or the speakerphone when you talk on your phone to keep it away from your brain. Don't sleep with your cell phone under your pillow. Don't put your cell phone in your pockets. And turn things off when you're not using them. Unplug your Wi-Fi router and turn off your phone if you absolutely don't need it at night. So what levels of RF radiation are considered safe, and what kinds of levels are typical? We did some of our own testing with an X-Tech 480836 EMF meter in a typical home and office scenario, and here's what we found.
So we took some readings at our store and at our home. First we started at our store, sorry for the messy workshop back here, and we got close to the wireless router and found that we had some spikes up to 0.6 microwatts per cubic centimeter, which is pretty high. So the question is, we still don't know what this stuff is doing to us, but there's some pretty cool charts at bioinitiative.org citing scientific studies that have already happened, and they have lots of easy-to-read, colorful charts with the potential effects of electromagnetic radiation in the human body. Again, these are proven to be long-term studies. Stuff's still kind of new. This is interesting, too. If you look at these smart meters that everybody's fussing about, I didn't think it was such a big deal until I took the readings myself, and looking at a peak of 37.28. And that's pretty heavy. I mean, that's a lot of power. Now, it's pulsed energy. It's not constant. But this might be hitting you in your bedroom or your place of work, depending on the location of this thing. And, of course, I'm right on top of it here. But if you look at it, you get immune system effects at that type of radiation. So you need to be concerned, if nothing else. We don't know if it's causing any cancer or immune system effects with a pulsed rate like that. Your body does a really good job of healing itself. Also, the microwave ovens, if you get really close, nobody would do this, would stand in front of a microwave oven, but there's considerable amount of energy coming out of a microwave oven. And you're looking at some of the effects that could here, including altered cell membranes. Of course, you wouldn't stand in front of a microwave oven. Most people have more sense than that. Although there is shielding inside, if you get right up on it, there are still some waves, microwaves, that do escape that shielding. So you want to make sure you're backed out. And you see, if I pull away and even leave the room, it gets back to more of a background radiation. Again, this is in our store. We've got Wi-Fi waves and microwaves flying all over the place in here. Now, this is just my laptop, and you can see as it's sending and receiving information, it's jacked up to about 0.2, 0.3, and you can see that there are some possible neurological effects, and that's constant. That's what we're probably doing sitting at our desks every day or at home, and even having these laptops on our laps. For the gentlemen especially, it could affect sterility. So if you're having a problem having kids, you might want to double check your electronic devices. Now, my wife was on a phone call, and look at this, spiking at 7 microwatts per cubic centimeter. And that's huge. I mean, it doesn't do
it all the time. We have a pretty crappy signal. We have Verizon in our house, and unfortunately we're a little far off the beaten path. So I understand the further are you away, the more energy your phone has to use to acquire that signal. As I pull this away from her cell phone while she's on an active call, and this doesn't happen all the time, just when you're on a telephone call, and it's a little less for Wi-Fi, you can see that it gets kind of jacked up periodically. Not all the time, but I mean, these are significant numbers here, this 3 and 4, and you can see on the chart here what this does, even up to 7. And again, this is more constant than the pulsed energy we're looking at. So if you spend a lot of time on the phone, you might have some questions about what is this stuff doing? It's a relatively new phenomenon, only the last decade or so, so we don't have a whole lot of information. We are the guinea pigs, my friends, so take some precautions and just be careful. It's better to be safe than be sorry. My name is Chuck Fresh. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends about this video too. Hey, we might all learn something if we put our heads together, and put your findings in the comments below, please. We'd like to know what you're experiencing with microwave and RF frequency radiation. Thanks again for watching.